Hi, I'm Srish, and in my endless quest to find a better, more efficient digital painting technique, I stumbled upon this reel. I say stumbled upon, this has been in my Instagram saved for a couple of years now, but today we're going to try painting a photo study, but we're going to start a little differently by altering our reference image. And I am wearing my artsy t-shirt today, so we're gonna make some art today. I did not have a question mark for this sign, so just pretend there's a question mark there. So this reel was shared by Daria or Psyche.god on Instagram, and they shared this really interesting technique for painting photo studies where you start by blurring your reference and then you copy that blurred version of the reference and then you gradually add in the sharper details. And I thought that would be an interesting technique to try for one of our 100 heads photo study challenges. So for our purposes today, I'm going to call this the Unblur Challenge. Now, if you've been on the art side of the internet, which in order to see this video you probably have been, you've likely stumbled upon artists who paint like this, particularly the Asian artists who are very popular, such as Wang Ling and Ruanjia, both of whom we've done style studies on. Now, I've seen them paint like this, but I don't think they necessarily blur their references, but they do start with very vague, blurry shapes on their canvas and then gradually sharpen up the details. So of course I had to try it out. Today we're working on this reference, which is number 5 out of our 100 heads challenge, and I'm really excited to see how this turns out. More than the end product though, I'm really eager to explore this technique and see if it actually works with my style of painting and just my own brain, because your girl is not a patient woman. If you enjoyed this video and learned something today, please remember to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more art content every week. Comment below letting me know if this is how you usually paint or if this is a technique that you plan to try out going forward. And come say hello on social media. All my links are in the description below. Alrighty, let's dive into the Unblur Challenge. So, looking at the reel that Daria posted, they start with a super blurry reference. And I know they're working in charcoal and start with a black base and erase out the vague shapes, but my big focus is on the idea of starting by blurring out the reference and studying that first before doing the details. I think this might really help us focus less on the tiny little shapes right from the get-go and help us start with the big picture instead. So I imported the reference that we're using today into Krita and set a very heavy blur on it. But if you know me, you know that I don't just do what is asked of me, I tend to go like 10 steps too far. So instead of just doing a blurry version and the original, I actually did a step-by-step reference sequence where each step gets less and less blurry until we get to the original sharp image. So I did like 2 extra in-between versions of the reference that get a little sharper. Yeah, we're working with 4 references, but it also is just one reference. Anyway, I imported it all into my Pure Ref window and now we can start to paint. Okay, let's get to work. As with every study ever, I started with a 4K square canvas. And for pretty much this entire painting, I only used a hard edge round brush with opacity dynamics, aka my magic brush. I think I did a little bit of blending and some airbrush with soft light blending mode, but that was way later in the process after we'd started working on the sharp details. For now, we're just gonna try and get some colors and shapes down. I started with the largest shape, which was that flat background, to sort of set up a vague silhouette. I mean, it's not like there's anything not vague about this reference right now, but look, this was hard to do. The whole time, I felt like I had really bad eyesight, and it was like this weird cognitive dissonance because I could see the tiny menu text in Critter just fine, but then this large image of a face that I was trying to replicate was just fully out of focus. Plus, you know how if something isn't really clear, your brain sort of tries to fill in the gaps for you? For some reason, my mind could not fathom the idea of soft edges here. Like, it was impossible to just create blurry shapes. I don't think humans are even supposed to. Yeah, let's go with that. What was especially hard was color matching. Because the image has been digitally blurred, the colors just kind of blend into this muddy mess, especially in like the shadowy areas of her cheek and jaw and also that neck. Oh, I'm in the mood to complain today. The eyes. Oh my god. Tell me why I accidentally painted the love child of an ant from the Ants movie and Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy. Do you see how dark that eye socket looks when it is this blurry? This face is my new sleep paralysis demon. I had to soften it because why was she looking at me like that? Okay, now we can move to the next step, which is a slightly less blurred reference. Here we're starting to see a little bit of detail. There is a little more separation of values and colors, and you can see a little bit of nuance here. The eyes had to be the first thing to get refined. I'm sorry, you guys, I could not look at her. I also really like that you can start to see the form and planes of the face now. It still felt like I desperately needed glasses, but we were starting to put down a little more detail at this stage. What's interesting is that you can see me zoom in more as the references get less blurry and my brush size gets smaller over time as well. I feel like this is how you're supposed to paint. Start really zoomed out with a large brush and work on the super large shapes, and then gradually zoom in and work with smaller brushes to get the details in. I suppose if you tend to start too zoomed in and go straight into the details, which is definitely how I used to draw and paint, especially when I was working with pencils on paper back in the early days, you kind of struggle with seeing the overall composition, and then your faces end up looking just completely out of proportion, like a botched facelift. Look at this. Please just look. This is what happens when you don't think about your big shapes at the beginning. Don't do this. So in that sense, yeah, this technique for sure forces you to work from big to small by literally just getting rid of your ability to even see the small shapes. Moving to our third step, we're almost there guys, we now have even more detail. Not quite enough nuance to really see the folds in the eyelids or any texture in the jumper or the hair, but we can see things like the jawline, hair highlights, the whites of the eyes, and some of the folds in the fabric. To be completely honest, you guys, I think I may have just created an unnecessary amount of hurdles for myself by creating the in-between steps because it just felt so time-consuming. But I really wanted to simplify the process as much as possible to try and replicate the way people like Wang Ling or Zine Chin paint, where they start with super vague brushwork and then add in details later on. I feel like it gives you this beautiful blended color variation, especially in the skin, which I do think this challenge helped me achieve quite nicely. Now, because I was trying to study a reference today, I didn't really change the skin tones or enhance them, but I think when I'm freestyling on an original piece, this sort of painting technique could actually help a lot. Imagine if you blended in some really saturated peachy tones in the apples of the cheek, but then hit a really cool desaturated highlight at the refinement stage. Oh, that would go so hard. However, I do think adding in the intermediate stages was definitely overkill, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. Be better than me, kids. Have a little more faith in yourself. Finally, we get to work on the actual reference. I can see again. It's a Christmas miracle. Yes, it's Christmas. Halloween ended 2 weeks ago. And yes, I said that to annoy one person and one person alone. Now, when it comes to this stage of the painting, this is where I sort of mentally switched off and went into render mode, which kind of ruined everything we worked so hard to learn last week. And funnily enough, there was actually a lot of refinement to be done, and also a lot of repositioning. I feel like so much of how we compose a painting comes from where we would place details on the canvas and like seeing the relative distance between all these focal points. So having the focal points completely diffused away takes away not only the shapes but also the relative sizes and placements of these features. So yeah, this exercise would definitely force you to consider large shapes before you work on the smaller details. But it also makes it really hard to eventually place the details. Like, it just feels like twice the effort. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to critique Daria or that art. I don't think they even came up with this technique. Based off the reel, it seems like this was an assignment they had to do for art school. I didn't even go to art school, so what do I know? But as someone who paints a lot, no, like literally, this is all I've done with the last decade of my life, I'm always looking for ways to not just make the painting process more efficient, but also more enjoyable for me personally. Because that's what art is all about. You've heard me say this a million times before, and I'll say it again. Art is in the process. The painting is just a nice byproduct of it, but art itself happens in all those hours that you spend with no one but your own self. I've learned more about myself through the process of painting than through anything else, and what I've learned is that I do not like repetition. Going over the same details over and over makes me want to actually crawl out of my own skin, and I feel like this process of going over the same face over and over again, just gradually refining everything bit by bit, it made me want to do unspeakable things. However, the true measure of how good a challenge is in what it teaches you. So what did we learn today? I definitely feel like this was a great exercise in terms of forcing yourself to go from big to small and to see the big picture instead of being bogged down by the small details. I also feel like this would be a wonderful technique to help introduce loads of color variations in the skin to really give you that super watercolory color wash skin effect. Like the colorful, almost porcelain looking skin that you see people like Ruan Jia paint. I think that would be way easier to achieve through this sort of technique. Also, I feel like if you're a super beginner and you're not very good at getting that defined sketch down and would rather find a starting point that is a lot more forgiving, this technique could really be your new go-to because it is definitely a calmer pace and you're building up to the details and likeness very gradually. Do I like the final outcome? Oh yeah, I absolutely love the final outcome. But like I said, the outcome is just a happy byproduct of real art, which is in the process. At least that's how I like to see it. And to me, the process itself wasn't the most enjoyable. I don't want to sit here and act like every single challenge I do on this channel is 100% a success. That is just unrealistic. And I'm absolutely not saying that this technique wouldn't work for anyone, because clearly it does work for lots of people. But for me personally, this was a little bit less than exciting. Though hey, the portrait turned out pretty solid. What do you think? Final thoughts? I don't know if this technique is for me. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot of merit to starting with big, vague shapes and then gradually adding in the smaller details. However, I personally am a very black and white, all or nothing type of gal, and having all these vague, blurred edges really stressed me out. But this is where you come in, because 9 times out of 10, the chances are that you probably paint very differently to me. So what do you think? Is this technique something you already work with? Do you think it will make your life easier going forward? Comment below and let me know. I have, of course, linked Daria's original reel down in the description. Make sure you go check it out and show them some love. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to show it some love as well by giving me a big thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button down below for more art content every week. Come say hello on Instagram, Discord, and Kara. Links are in the description. And if you like what I do and would like to grab even more content, such as all of my speed paints from start to finish, the complete collection of Art and Chill real-time tutorial videos, which are not on here, all of my custom brushes that I've made from scratch, as well as prints of my work every few months, it is all up on Patreon, and your support on that allows me to keep making all this content. So I will leave a link up here and down in the description below, and thank you so much for checking it out. Alrighty you guys, so that's about everything for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you want to look at a painting technique that I did really love, last week we looked at working on brush economy, and that is a technique that has just completely changed the game for me personally. So if you're someone like me, you will definitely enjoy that video. I'll leave it here in the outro. Make sure you check it out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!